Perhaps everyone is familiar with the feeling of being overwhelmed by a huge challenge or the sense of universal opposition, even when convinced of one's own righteousness. If so, you have more in common with one of history's most remarkable kings than you might imagine. Let's embark on the captivating journey of David, a simple shepherd who became Israel's most beloved king and a man after God's own heart. However, we shouldn't idealize David. His life was filled with both dizzying highs and painful lows, triumphant victories and crushing defeats. This is precisely what makes his story so compelling and relevant to modern readers. We begin at the very start, with the incredible transformation of a young shepherd into a courtier. Our story begins in Bethlehem, a small town on the outskirts of Jerusalem. Here lived the family of Jesse, an ordinary man whose lineage was nonetheless destined to play a decisive role in Israel's history. In 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 1, we read that the Lord directed the prophet Samuel to Bethlehem, to the house of Jesse, with a secret and extremely important mission: to anoint a new king for Israel. Jesse had 8 sons, and David was the youngest. While his elder brothers were distinguished by their strength and stature, David spent his days in the pastures, tending his father's sheep. This seemingly insignificant work largely shaped the character of the future king. In the fields of Bethlehem, David learned lessons that no palace could teach. He developed courage by defending the flock from wild animals, compassion by caring for the weak sheep, and leadership skills by guiding the flock to lush pastures and calm waters. Unbeknownst to himself, he was preparing to govern an entire nation. 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 11 recounts how Samuel arrived at Jesse's house. All the elder sons were presented to the prophet in turn, but the Lord chose none of them. Intrigued, Samuel asked Jesse if he had any other sons. "There is still the youngest," Jesse replied, "but he is tending the sheep." When David finally appeared, Samuel's heart must have pounded. Before him stood a young man with a ruddy complexion, beautiful eyes, and a pleasant appearance. But the most important thing was what the Lord saw. "Rise and anoint him," the Lord told Samuel, "for this is the one." In 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 13, we read about the moment that forever changed David's life and the destiny of Israel. Then Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the presence of his brothers, and from that day on, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David. Just imagine the scene: a young shepherd, probably bewildered and surprised, anointed as the future king of Israel. His brothers, who had always seen him only as the youngest, now witnessed something truly extraordinary. But, in essence, David's journey was only just beginning. After the anointing, David returned to his usual duties in the fields. At first glance, his life remained the same. He still cared for the flock, remaining a simple shepherd. However, changes stirred within his soul. The Spirit of the Lord was with him, preparing him for the events to come. Meanwhile, dark clouds gathered in King Saul's palace. In 1 Samuel chapter 16, verses 14 to 23, it is recounted how the Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul, and an evil spirit began to torment him. Saul's courtiers, seeking to alleviate the king's suffering, suggested finding a skilled harpist, hoping that music could soothe his troubled spirit. It was at this moment that David's name was heard at court. One of the servants who knew him described him as a skillful musician, a brave warrior, a wise speaker, a man of pleasant appearance, and, most importantly, a man with whom the Lord was present. Thus David was invited to Saul's palace. The young shepherd, who had recently spent his days in the pastures near Bethlehem, now found himself in the royal chambers, playing the harp to calm the tormented king. Saul was impressed by David's talent and humility and made him his armor-bearer. In this part of the story, we see how God directed the course of events. David's musical gift, honed during long hours spent in the fields, now opened the doors to the palace, allowing him to learn the intricacies of statecraft and prepare for his future role. However, the most important moment in David's youth had not yet arrived. 1 Samuel chapter 17 tells the famous story of David and Goliath. The Israelite army confronted the Philistines, and a giant Philistine warrior named Goliath daily challenged the Israelites to single combat, daring them to send out their best fighter. Goliath was a true giant, standing about 9 feet tall. His armor weighed over 125 pounds, and the head of his spear was like a weaver's rod. For 40 days, he mocked the Israelite army, demanding they send a warrior to fight. David, who had temporarily returned to his father to tend the sheep, was sent to the battlefield to deliver provisions to his elder brothers. Upon arriving, he heard Goliath's defiant words and became indignant. "Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God?" he exclaimed. David's courage in the face of the giant did not arise suddenly. It was forged in the fields of Bethlehem, where he fought off lions and bears, protecting his flock. When asked how he intended to fight Goliath, David confidently replied, "The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine." Armed only with his sling, 5 smooth stones he had picked up from a stream, and unwavering faith in God, David bravely went to meet Goliath. The contrast between them was striking. A young shepherd against an experienced warrior, a sling against a sword, faith against brute force. When the fearsome Goliath saw young David before him, he treated him with contempt, emphasizing his youth and inexperience. "Am I a dog that you come at me with sticks?" the giant sneered. However, David's reply resonated with power that has endured through the ages. "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied." Just one accurate stone, hurled from David's sling, struck Goliath directly in the forehead, and the huge warrior crashed to the ground. Thus, the incredible happened. A simple shepherd triumphed over an experienced warrior, and faith conquered fear. David's victory over Goliath was not merely a military triumph, but a powerful demonstration of the strength born of faith in the Almighty. This event showed the people of Israel and the entire world that the Lord looks at things differently than man. While people judge by outward appearance, God sees the heart. This moment marked the beginning of David's ascent. From an unknown shepherd from Bethlehem, he was instantly transformed into a national hero. Women sang in the streets, celebrating his feat. Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands. David's early years, from his secret anointing as king to his public victory over Goliath, laid a solid foundation for everything that was to happen in his life. This period teaches us important lessons about preparation, courage, and trust in God. David did not become an outstanding leader overnight. Every experience of his youth, shepherding, playing a musical instrument for Saul, confronting Goliath, was a step in shaping his character and leadership qualities. He met his personal Goliaths long before he stepped onto the actual battlefield. The story of David's youth reminds us that the Almighty often works in hidden ways, preparing us for a purpose that surpasses our wildest dreams. In moments of seeming insignificance, when we feel forgotten or underestimated, God may be working to shape our character and develop skills that will serve us in the future. David's courage in the face of Goliath inspires us to confront our own giants with unwavering faith. What are the Goliaths in our lives? Fears, insecurities, seemingly insurmountable difficulties. David's story reminds us that with God, there are no obstacles that cannot be overcome. Finally, David's youth teaches us the importance of faithfulness in small matters. Before leading armies, David cared for sheep. Before performing for large audiences, he played a musical instrument in quiet fields. His dedication in these seemingly insignificant tasks prepared him for the great responsibilities that awaited him. As we continue to study David's story, we will see how these early years shaped the man he became. The experience of a shepherd, musician, and young warrior laid the groundwork for his reign as the greatest king of Israel. But the path ahead would not be easy. David would face trials, persecutions, and temptations that would put his faith and character to severe tests. David's triumph over Goliath marked the beginning of a new phase in his destiny. The young shepherd became known throughout Israel as a valiant war hero. While the people rejoiced, an unusual friendship began to blossom in King Saul's court. Jonathan, Saul's son and heir to the throne, was deeply impressed by David. The biblical text gives us a beautiful description of this friendship in 1 Samuel chapter 18, verse 1. As soon as David finished speaking with Saul, Jonathan became one in spirit with David, and he loved him as himself. This was not merely a comradeship, but a deep bond based on mutual respect and admiration. The depth of this friendship is revealed in Jonathan's actions. In 1 Samuel chapter 18, verse 4, we see a symbolic and significant gesture. Jonathan took off the robe he was wearing and gave it to David, along with his tunic, and even his sword, his bow, and his belt. This act was not just a gift between friends. In the culture of that time, it was a recognition of David's right to the throne. Jonathan, the royal heir, was effectively relinquishing his right in favor of David. As this friendship grew stronger, David also gained the favor of King Saul and the people. In 1 Samuel chapter 18, verse 5, we read, "Whatever mission Saul sent him on, David was so successful that Saul gave him a high rank in the army. This pleased all the people and Saul's officers as well." David demonstrated not only bravery on the battlefield, but also wisdom and leadership skills. However, David's success soon became a source of contention. After a major military victory, the women of Israel came out to celebrate, singing, "Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands." 1 Samuel chapter 18, verse 7. This song, while praising both Saul and David, sparked jealousy in the king's heart. Saul's reaction to this song marks the beginning of a dramatic shift in his relationship with David. In 1 Samuel chapter 18, verses 8 and 9, we read, "Saul was very angry. This refrain displeased him greatly. They have ascribed to David tens of thousands, he thought, but to me only thousands. What more can he get but the kingdom?" And from that time on, Saul kept a jealous eye on David. Saul's jealousy quickly escalated into hostile actions against David. The next day, as recounted in 1 Samuel chapter 18, verses 10 and 11, an evil spirit from God came forcefully on Saul, and he was prophesying in his house. While David was playing the lyre, as he usually did, Saul had a spear in his hand, and he hurled it, saying to himself, "I'll pin David to the wall." But David eluded him twice. This incident marks the beginning of a long series of attempts by Saul to kill David. The young warrior, who was once a welcome guest at the king's court, now found himself in constant danger. Despite the escalating animosity from Saul, David continued to prosper. In 1 Samuel chapter 18, verses 14 to 16, we learn, "In everything he did, David had great success because the Lord was with him. When Saul saw how successful he was afraid of him. But all Israel and Judah loved David because he led them in their campaigns." Realizing that he could not eliminate David openly, Saul began to devise more sophisticated plans. One such ploy involved his own daughter, Michal. In 1 Samuel chapter 18, verses 20 to 21, it is recounted, "Now Saul's daughter Michal was in love with David, and when they told Saul about it, he was pleased. 'I will give her to him,' he thought, 'so that she may be a snare to him, and so that the hand of the Philistines may be against him.' Saul offered David Michal's hand, but set a treacherous condition. As a bride price, he demanded 100 Philistine foreskins, hoping David would perish trying to fulfill this demand. However, David not only survived, but exceeded expectations, bringing 200 foreskins. Saul had no choice but to give Michal to David in marriage. However, marriage to Michal did not bring David the longed-for security. Saul's hostility continued to grow. In 1 Samuel chapter 19, verse 1, we read, "Saul told his son Jonathan and all his officials that he intended to kill David, but Jonathan was very fond of David." Here, the friendship between David and Jonathan plays a key role in David's salvation. Jonathan, risking his own position, spoke in defense of David to his father. In 1 Samuel chapter 19, verses 4 to 5, he pleaded, "Let not the king sin against his servant David, for he has not sinned against you, and his deeds have been a great benefit to you. He took his life in his hands when he struck down the Philistine, and the Lord brought about a great victory for all Israel. You saw it and were glad. Why then would you do wrong to an innocent man by killing David without cause?" Temporarily convinced by Jonathan's arguments, Saul swore, "As surely as the Lord lives, David will not be put to death." 1 Samuel chapter 19, verse 6. However, the truce was short-lived. Soon the evil spirit returned to torment Saul, and he again tried to kill David with a spear. David managed to evade the blow, but it became clear that he no longer had a place in Saul's court. At this critical moment, Michal, David's wife, played a crucial role in his escape. In 1 Samuel chapter 19, verses 11 to 12, we read, "Saul sent men to David's house to watch it and to kill him in the morning. But Michal, David's wife, warned him, 'If you don't run for your life tonight, tomorrow you will be killed.' So Michal let David down through a window, and he fled and escaped. Thus began David's era of wandering. The man who was once a hero of the Israelite people and a favorite of the royal court was now forced to live as a fugitive in his own land. During this difficult period, David sought support in various places. First, he went to a priest named Ahimelech in the city of Nob. Unwilling to reveal the true state of affairs, David lied that he was on a secret mission for the king. Ahimelech, unaware of the impending danger, provided David with the consecrated bread and Goliath's sword. This event, seemingly insignificant at first, later led to tragic consequences. Dog the Edomite, one of Saul's servants, witnessed what happened and later reported it to Saul, leading to the execution of Ahimelech and many other priests from Nob. David fled to Gath in Philistine territory, where he feigned madness to avoid being recognized as the celebrated Israelite warrior. After this, he found refuge in the cave of Adullam, where he was joined by members of his family and all who were in distress, in debt, or discontented. 1 Samuel chapter 22, verse 2. Meanwhile, Saul continued his relentless pursuit of David. The king's obsession with destroying David led to terrible acts of cruelty, including the massacre of the priests of Nob, who had unknowingly assisted David. During this period of wandering, David had two clear opportunities to take Saul's life, but he refused to do so. The first opportunity arose in the cave of En-Gedi. Saul entered the cave to relieve himself, unaware that David and his men were hiding there. In 1 Samuel chapter 24, verses 4 to 6, we read, "The men said, 'This is the day the Lord spoke of, when he said to you, I will give your enemy into your hands for you to deal with as you wish.' Then David crept up unnoticed and cut off a corner of Saul's robe. Afterward, David was conscience-stricken for having cut off a corner of his robe. He said to his men, 'The Lord forbid that I should do such a thing to my master, the Lord's anointed, or lay my hand on him, for he is the Lord's anointed.'" The second opportunity presented itself when David infiltrated Saul's camp at night and found the king asleep. Again, David refused to kill Saul, saying in 1 Samuel chapter 26, verses 9 to 11, "Do not destroy him. Who can lay a hand on the Lord's anointed and be guiltless?" "As surely as the Lord lives," David said, "the Lord himself will strike him. Either his time will come and he will die, or he will go into battle and perish. But the Lord forbid that I should lay a hand on the Lord's anointed." These actions demonstrate David's deep respect for God-ordained authority, even when that authority was unjustly used against him. David recognized that despite Saul's flaws, he was still God's anointed king, and it was not for David to forcibly take the kingdom. Saul's persecution of David continued for many years, forcing David to live as a fugitive in his own country and even among the enemies of the Israelite people. During this time, David wrote many of the Psalms we know today, expressing his longing, his hope in God, and his determination to remain faithful. The time of wandering and exile became a turning point in David's personal development. Far from the royal chambers and the glory of military fame, David learned to rely entirely on the Almighty in incredibly difficult circumstances. He honed his leadership skills, gathering a diverse group of people around him and leading them. All these trials served as excellent preparation for the role he was destined to play in the future, the role of King of Israel. Saul's persecutions of David ceased only with Saul's death in battle against the Philistines. Saul, realizing the hopelessness of his situation, chose to take his own life rather than be captured by the enemy. When the sad news reached David, he did not rejoice but mourned. In 2 Samuel chapter 1 verses 19 to 23, we can read an excerpt from David's lament. "Your glory, O Israel, lies slain on your heights. How the mighty have fallen. Saul and Jonathan. In life they were loved and gracious, and in death they were not parted. They were swifter than eagles, they were stronger than lions. Daughters of Israel, weep for Saul, who clothed you in scarlet and finery, who adorned your garments with gold." This lament perfectly demonstrates David's nobility. Even after long years of persecution, he managed to retain good memories of Saul and honor his memory. David's lament for Jonathan is particularly touching, emphasizing the depth of their friendship. David's journey from a loyal associate of the king to a persecuted enemy was long and arduous. However, it was precisely through these trials that David's character was forged and shaped. He learned lessons of humility, patience, and faith in the Almighty, which would later play a decisive role in his reign over Israel. The story of David and Saul offers us valuable lessons about leadership, envy, friendship, and devotion to God. We see how destructive jealousy can be, even for those chosen by God, and how integrity and faith can sustain a person in the most difficult times. As David prepared to ascend the throne promised to him by God many years ago, he carried with him a wealth of knowledge and experience gained during years of persecution. These experiences profoundly impacted his future reign and his relationship with God. The news of Saul's and Jonathan's deaths was brought to David by a young Amalekite. The messenger, hoping for a reward, claimed that he had struck the fatal blow to Saul at the king's own request. However, his hopes for reward were dashed by David's reaction. In 2 Samuel chapter 1 verses 14 to 16 we read, David asked him, "Why were you not afraid to lift your hand to destroy the Lord's anointed?" Then David called one of his men and said, "Go, strike him down." So he struck him down, and he died. For David had said to him, "Your blood be on your own head. Your own mouth testified against you when you said, 'I killed the Lord's anointed.'" This act of David demonstrated his profound respect for God-given authority, even if that authority had been directed against him. It also served as a stern warning to all that any attempts to curry favor with David through violence against his enemies would be severely punished. After a period of sorrowful mourning, David sought guidance from the Almighty regarding his next steps. In 2 Samuel chapter 2 verse 1, we find the record of David inquiring of the Lord, asking if he should go up to one of the towns of Judah, and the Lord answered, "Go up." Then David clarified, "Where shall I go?" And the Lord directed him to Hebron. This practice of consulting God before making decisions would become a hallmark of David's reign, fundamentally distinguishing him from Saul, who often acted based solely on his own understanding. Upon arriving in Hebron, David was solemnly anointed king over the tribe of Judah. In 2 Samuel chapter 2, verse 4, it states, "Then the men of Judah came to Hebron, and there they anointed David king over the house of Judah." This was the first step toward the fulfillment of the prophecy given to David many years earlier through Samuel's secret anointing. However, David's ascent to the throne of all Israel was neither instantaneous nor easy. Abner, Saul's commander, proclaimed Ishbosheth, Saul's son, king over the rest of the tribes of Israel. This event initiated a prolonged civil war between the supporters of Saul's house and the adherents of David's house. In 2 Samuel chapter 3, verse 1, we read, "The war between the house of Saul and the house of David lasted a long time. David grew stronger and stronger, while the house of Saul grew weaker and weaker." This phrase succinctly captures the overall dynamic of events during that period. But the Civil War itself was filled with tragic episodes and complex twists. One of the most significant events of those years was the death of Abner. After disagreements with Ishbosheth, Abner decided to defect to David's side. David received him favorably and sent him away in peace. However, Joab, David's commander, saw Abner as a potential threat and murdered him, avenging his brother's death. David's reaction to this atrocity is quite telling. In 2 Samuel chapter 3, verses 28 and 29, David declares, "I and my kingdom are forever innocent before the Lord concerning the blood of Abner, son of Ner. May his blood rest on the head of Joab and on all his father's house. May there never be in Joab's house anyone who has a discharge or a skin disease, or who leans on a crutch, or who falls by the sword, or who lacks food." This statement demonstrates David's unwavering commitment to the principles of justice and his rejection of unjustified violence, even when it came from his closest associates. The civil war ended with the assassination of Ishbosheth by two of his own commanders. Hoping to earn a reward from David, they brought Ishbosheth's head to Hebron. But again, David's reaction was unexpected. In 2 Samuel chapter 4, verses 9 to 12, we read, "David replied to Rechab and his brother Baanah, the sons of Rimmon the Beerothite, 'As surely as the Lord lives, who has delivered me out of all trouble, when someone told me, Saul is dead, and thought he was bringing good news, I seized him and put him to death in Ziklag. That was the reward I gave him for his news. How much more, when wicked men have killed an innocent man in his own house and on his own bed, should I not now demand his blood from your hand and rid the earth of you?' So David gave an order to his men, and they killed them. They cut off their hands and feet and hung the bodies by the pool in Hebron, but they took Ishbosheth's head and buried it in Abner's tomb in Hebron." With the death of Ishbosheth, David's path to the throne over all Israel was clear. In 2 Samuel chapter 5, verses 1 to 3, the unification of the kingdom is described, where all the tribes of Israel came to David in Hebron, acknowledging him as their leader and ruler. They reminded him that even under King Saul, David had led the Israelite armies in battle, and that the Lord himself had foretold that he would be the shepherd of his people Israel and their ruler. In Hebron, before the Lord, the elders of Israel made a covenant with King David and anointed him king over Israel. This anointing in Hebron was the triumphant culmination of the prophecy given by God to David many years earlier. From a shepherd of sheep, a court musician, and a warrior hiding from persecution, he became the king of all Israel. One of David's first acts as king of a united Israel was the conquest of Jerusalem. In 2 Samuel chapter 5, verses 6 to 7, it is recounted how David and his soldiers marched against the Jebusites who inhabited Jerusalem. The Jebusites, confident in the impregnability of their city, mocked David, saying that even the blind and the lame could repel his attack. However, David managed to capture the fortress of Zion, which has since become known as the City of David. The choice of Jerusalem as the capital was a strategically sound decision. Located on the border between the northern and southern tribes, Jerusalem was destined to become a unifying center for the entire nation. Furthermore, since it had not previously belonged to any specific tribe, it had every chance of becoming a truly national city, a symbol of unity and harmony. After establishing Jerusalem as the capital, David faced a threat from the Philistines. In 2 Samuel chapter 5, verses 17 to 21, it describes how David reacted to this danger. When the Philistines heard that David had been anointed king over Israel, they gathered their forces to attack him. David, upon receiving this news, took refuge in the stronghold. The Philistines positioned themselves in the valley of Rephaim, preparing for battle. David inquired of the Lord, asking if he should go against the Philistines and if the Lord would deliver them into his hands. The Lord answered David, "Go, for I will surely deliver the Philistines into your hands." David went to Baal-perazim and inflicted a decisive defeat on the Philistines. He exclaimed, "As waters break out, the Lord has broken out against my enemies before me." Therefore, that place was named Baal-perazim, meaning the place of breakthrough. The Philistines, fleeing, left behind their idols, which David and his men took as trophies. This victory over the Philistines was of immense importance, not only militarily, but also spiritually. The capture and destruction of Philistine idols became a symbol of the superiority of the God of Israel over the gods of neighboring peoples, confirming his power and authority. Having strengthened the unity of the nation and established the capital, David turned his attention to religious matters. One of his main priorities was to bring the Ark of the Covenant back to Jerusalem. The Ark, which symbolized God's presence among the people, had long been relegated to the background in national life. However, the first attempt to transport the Ark to Jerusalem ended tragically. In 2 Samuel chapter 6, verses 6 to 7, it is recounted how, during the transport of the Ark, Uzzah, seeing that the oxen stumbled, reached out his hand to steady it. For this irreverent act, the Lord's anger burned against Uzzah, and he struck him down, so that he died there beside the Ark of God. This sad incident became an important lesson for David and all Israel about the holiness of God and the need to strictly follow his commands. After a period of 3 months, during which the sacred Ark remained in the house of Obed-Edom, King David undertook a new attempt to bring it to Jerusalem. This time, the Ark was transported in strict accordance with divine instructions, carried on the shoulders of the Levites, as prescribed. The arrival of the Ark in Jerusalem was marked by a grand celebration, full of rejoicing and reverence. In 2 Samuel chapter 6, verses 14 and 15, it is recounted, "David, wearing a linen ephod, danced before the Lord with all his might, while he and all the Israelites brought up the ark of the Lord with shouts and the sound of trumpets." David's dance before the ark was an expression of sincere worship and boundless devotion to the Almighty. However, not everyone present appreciated this act of profound faith. Michal, Saul's daughter and David's wife, felt contempt for his behavior. David's response to Michal, recorded in 2 Samuel chapter 6, verses 21 and 22, vividly demonstrates his spiritual essence. David said to Michal, "It was before the Lord, who chose me rather than your father or anyone from his house, when he appointed me ruler over the Lord's people Israel. I will celebrate before the Lord. I will become even more undignified than this, and I will be humiliated in my own eyes. But by these slave girls you spoke of, I will be held in honor." After the ark was settled in Jerusalem, David was eager to build a magnificent temple for its permanent placement. Nevertheless, God had other plans in this regard. In 2 Samuel chapter 7, verses 5 to 7, we find God's answer, delivered through the prophet Nathan. "Go and tell my servant David, this is what the Lord says. Are you the one to build me a house to dwell in? I have not dwelt in a house from the day I brought the Israelites up out of Egypt to this day. I have moved from place to place with a tent as my dwelling. Wherever I have moved with all the Israelites, did I ever say to any of their rulers, whom I commanded to shepherd my people Israel, 'Why have you not built me a house of cedar?'" Despite denying David's request to build a temple, God granted him an exceptional promise full of hope and grandeur. In 2 Samuel chapter 7, verses 11 to 16, God solemnly declares, "The Lord declares to you that the Lord himself will establish a house for you. When your days are over and you rest with your ancestors, I will raise up your offspring to succeed you, your own flesh and blood, and I will establish his kingdom. He is the one who will build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. I will be his father, and he will be my son. When he does wrong, I will punish him with a rod wielded by men, with blows inflicted by human beings. But my love will never be taken away from him, as I took it away from Saul, whom I removed from before you. Your house and your kingdom will endure forever before me. Your throne will be established forever." This promise, known as the Davidic covenant, is one of the key moments in the annals of Israel. God promised David an eternal dynasty, a prophecy that would find its ultimate fulfillment in Jesus Christ, the Son of David in the fullest sense of the word. David's response to this divine promise is an inspired prayer, filled with gratitude and deep humility. In 2 Samuel chapter 7, verses 18 and 19, we read, "Then King David went in and sat before the Lord, and he said, 'Who am I, sovereign Lord, and what is my family, that you have brought me this far? And as if this were not enough in your sight, sovereign Lord, you have also spoken about the future of the house of your servant, and this is your custom with people, sovereign Lord.'" David's enthronement opened a new era for the entire nation of Israel. Under his wise leadership, Israel transformed into a powerful regional state, significantly expanding its borders and forging important alliances with neighboring nations. Even more significantly, David established Jerusalem not only as Israel's political center, but also as its spiritual heart. David's reign was certainly not without serious challenges and personal tragedies, which we will learn about in later chapters of his biography. Nevertheless, the strong foundation he laid in the early years of his rule, encompassing a united nation, a strengthened capital, and, most importantly, a renewed faith in the Lord, shaped Israel's future for many generations to come. David's incredible journey, from an unknown shepherd in Bethlehem to ascending the throne in Jerusalem, is a vivid example of divine providence and his special plan for his people. At every stage of this journey, whether as a shepherd, a court musician, a fugitive warrior, or finally a king, David demonstrated unwavering faith in the Almighty and devotion to his will. David's ascent to the throne was not just his personal triumph, but a turning point in the history of all Israel. Under his wise leadership, the nation achieved long-awaited unity, grew in strength, and gained a new sense of divine purpose. The choice of Jerusalem as the capital and the placement of the Ark of the Covenant there laid a solid foundation for the spiritual center of the Jewish people for centuries. The Davidic covenant, God's divine promise of an eternal dynasty, extended far beyond his immediate kingdom, pointing to a coming messianic hope. This promise became central to the faith and hope of Israel, finding its ultimate fulfillment in Jesus Christ. The story of David's ascent offers us valuable lessons about the importance of patience, perseverance, and faith in God's timing. David waited many years for the fulfillment of God's promise, facing persecution and wandering. However, He resolutely refused to seize power by force, demonstrating deep respect for God-ordained authority, even when that authority was unjust. At the same time, we see in David a leader who was not sinless, but always sought to learn from his mistakes and seek God's guidance. His reaction to Uzzah's tragic death and his subsequent deliberate approach to moving the ark to Jerusalem demonstrate a sincere desire to submit to the will of the Almighty, even if it meant acknowledging and correcting his own errors. As David established himself as king over all Israel, he faced ever new challenges. His reign was marked by both great victories and territorial expansion, as well as deep personal failures and painful family conflicts. Nevertheless, the strong foundation laid in these early years of his reign, including a deep faith in God, a commitment to justice, and a desire for worship, continued to define his rule and legacy for many years. David's legacy is not merely a narrative of his personal triumph, but a vibrant testament to the transformative power of the Almighty, manifested in the destiny of both an individual and an entire nation. This inspiring story continues to show the right path, reminding us that the Lord is capable of using the most ordinary people to achieve His great designs, and that true greatness is born out of humble submission to the divine will. Having unified the kingdom and established Jerusalem as the capital, David directed his efforts toward expanding and strengthening Israel. His military campaigns were marked by impressive successes. In 2 Samuel chapter 8, verses 2 to 6, some of his conquests are recounted. He defeated the Moabites, putting them to death by measuring them with a rope. He made them lie down on the ground and measured off 2 lengths of them to be put to death and 1 full length to be spared. So the Moabites became subject to David and brought him tribute. Moreover, David defeated Hadadezer, son of Rehob, king of Zobah, when Hadadezer went to restore his control along the Euphrates River. David captured 1,000 of his chariots, 7,000 charioteers, and 20,000 foot soldiers. He hamstrung all but 100 of the chariot horses. When the Arameans of Damascus came to help Hadadezer, king of Zobah, David struck down 22,000 of them. He put garrisons in the Aramean kingdom of Damascus, and the Arameans became subject to him and brought tribute. The Lord gave David victory wherever he went. These brilliant victories not only expanded the borders of the Israelite kingdom, but also brought immense wealth. David, as a sign of his deep gratitude to the Almighty for the victories achieved, dedicated a significant portion of the war spoils to the Lord. David's reign was also marked by acts of justice and mercy. In 2 Samuel chapter 9, verse 1, we see David asking, "Is there anyone still left of the house of Saul to whom I can show kindness for Jonathan's sake?" This question led to a meeting with Mephibosheth, Jonathan's son, to whom David showed great kindness, fulfilling his promise to Jonathan. However, at the peak of his power and success, David committed a sin that cast a dark shadow over his reign and had long-lasting consequences. This sad story begins in 2 Samuel chapter 11, verses 1 to 2. In the spring, at the time when kings go off to war, David sent Joab with his men and the whole Israelite army. They destroyed the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah. But David remained in Jerusalem. One evening, David got up from his bed and walked around on the roof of his palace. From the roof, he saw a woman bathing. This woman was Bathsheba, the wife of Uriah the Hittite, one of David's most valiant warriors. Instead of looking away, David sent for her and committed adultery with her. The story of King David exemplifies how even great individuals can fall victim to temptation and what grave consequences sinful actions can entail. When Bathsheba informed David of her pregnancy, the king, consumed by fear of exposure, attempted to conceal his sin. First, he summoned Uriah the Hittite, Bathsheba's husband, from the battlefield, hoping that Uriah would sleep with his wife and believe himself to be the father. However, Uriah, displaying extraordinary honor and loyalty to his comrades, refused worldly pleasures, stating that he could not enjoy domestic comforts while his fellow soldiers fought for Israel. In 2 Samuel chapter 11, verse 11, Uriah's words to David are recorded, "The ark and Israel and Judah are staying in tents, and my commander Joab and my Lord's men are camped in the open country. How could I go to my house to eat and drink and make love to my wife? As surely as you live, I will not do such a thing." Having failed in his initial scheme, David resorted to an even more monstrous act. He sent Uriah back to the front lines, providing him with a letter for Joab, commanding the commander to place Uriah in the fiercest part of the battle and then withdraw, leaving him to certain death. After Uriah's tragic death, David took Bathsheba as his wife, believing his sin to be a secret. But, as is known, nothing can escape the all-seeing eye of the Lord. In 2 Samuel chapter 12, verse 1, we read, "The Lord sent Nathan to David." The prophet Nathan, sent by God, confronted David, presenting him with a parable about a rich man who selfishly stole and slaughtered a poor man's only lamb. Outraged by the injustice of the story, David angrily declared that the guilty party deserved death. At that moment, Nathan uttered words that pierced the king's heart. "You are the man." This rebuke led David to deep repentance. In 2 Samuel chapter 12, verse 13, David humbly confesses, "I have sinned against the Lord." Although God forgave David, the consequences of his sin proved severe. Nathan prophesied that the sword would never depart from David's house, and that the child born of his union with Bathsheba would die. Indeed, soon after birth, the infant became seriously ill and, despite David's fervent prayers, died 7 days later. David's reaction to this tragic loss deserves special attention. In 2 Samuel chapter 12, verse 20, it is recounted, "Then David got up from the ground. After he had washed, put on lotions, and changed his clothes, he went into the house of the Lord and worshipped." In response to the bewilderment of those around him, David explained his behavior with faith in God's omnipotence, saying in 2 Samuel chapter 12, verse 23, "But now that he is dead, why should I go on fasting? Can I bring him back again? I will go to him, but he will not return to me." However, the consequences of David's sin continued to plague him in subsequent years. One of Nathan's most tragic prophecies was fulfilled when Amnon, David's son, violated his half-sister Tamar. This terrible act provoked a chain of bloody revenge and rebellions, culminating in the rebellion of Absalom, another of David's sons. Absalom's revolt forced David to flee Jerusalem, reminiscent of his flight from Saul's persecution in the past. In 2 Samuel chapter 15, verse 30, we see the sorrowful image of David. David went up the ascent of the Mount of Olives, weeping as he went. His head was covered, and he was barefoot. All the people with him covered their heads and wept as they went up. King David's life was full of triumphs and downfalls, moments of glory and deep personal trials. One of the most difficult periods in his life was the rebellion of his own son, Absalom, who sought to overthrow his father and seize the throne. David, forced to flee Jerusalem, faced betrayal and humiliation, yet maintained his faith in God. During his flight, David was subjected to insults and humiliation, but he responded with humility and trust in the Almighty. When Shimei, a descendant of Saul, cursed David, the king replied, as recorded in 2 Samuel chapter 16, verses 11 and 12, "Leave him alone, let him curse, for the Lord has told him to. It may be that the Lord will look on my distress and repay me with good for his cursing today." Absalom's rebellion ended tragically with his death, despite David's direct command to spare his son's life. David's lament for Absalom is one of the most poignant episodes in the Bible. In 2 Samuel chapter 18, verse 33, we read, "The king was shaken. He went up to the room over the gateway and wept. As he went, he said, "My son Absalom, my son, Absalom. If only I had died instead of you, Absalom, my son, my son." Despite personal tragedies and trials, David's reign was marked by military victories and a period of prosperity for Israel. However, late in his reign, David made a serious mistake by taking a census of the population, which was not sanctioned by the Lord. In 2 Samuel chapter 24, verse 10, David acknowledges his transgression. David was conscience-stricken after he had counted the fighting men, and he said to the Lord, "I have sinned greatly in what I have done. Now, Lord, I beg you, take away the guilt of your servant. I have done a very foolish thing." This census led to a plague that claimed the lives of 70,000 Israelites. The plague ceased only after David built an altar and offered sacrifices at the site where the temple was later constructed. David's reign, with its grandeur and its sins, serves as a vivid reminder of the complexity of human nature and the need for constant reliance on God. Despite his mistakes, David remained devoted to the Almighty, always striving for repentance and restoration after his falls. This is why, despite his sins, David is remembered by the people as a man after God's own heart. In the final years of his reign, David focused on a project he had long dreamed of, building a temple for the Lord. Although God determined that the temple would be built not by David but by his son, David dedicated himself to thorough preparations for this grand undertaking. In 1 Chronicles chapter 22, verse 5, David's efforts are described. David said, "My son Solomon is young and inexperienced, and the house to be built for the Lord must be of great magnificence and fame and splendor in the sight of all the nations. Therefore, I will make preparations for it." So David made extensive preparations before his death. David's undeniable devotion to the idea of building the temple is vividly demonstrated by the colossal amount of resources he purposefully amassed for this grand project. In 1 Chronicles chapter 22, verse 14, David enthusiastically declares, "I have made preparations for the house of the Lord with great effort, 100,000 talents of gold, which is approximately 3,400 tons, and 1,000,000 talents of silver, which is about 34,000 tons, and bronze and iron in unmeasurable quantities, for there was indeed a very great amount, as well as wood and stones. And you, Solomon, may add to this." In addition to securing the material foundation, David took special care to organize the Levites and priests who were to serve in the future temple. He meticulously established shifts for the clergy, organized musical ensembles and singers, and appointed responsible gatekeepers to ensure order and security in the temple. All these prudent preparations clearly demonstrate David's deep interest in ensuring that the worship of God would be conducted with due reverence and in strict accordance with established rules, even after his passing. As David entered his mature old age, the question of succession to the throne became increasingly pressing and required immediate resolution. Although God had already designated Solomon as David's successor, a daring attempt to usurp power was made by Adonijah, one of David's other sons. This acute succession crisis is detailed in 1 Kings chapter 1. In response to the emerging threat, David acted decisively and firmly to definitively establish Solomon as his legitimate successor. In 1 Kings chapter 1, verses 32 to 35, we read, "King David said, 'Call to me Zadok the priest, Nathan the prophet, and Benaiah son of Jehoiada.' When they came before the king, he said to them, 'Take your Lord's servants with you, and have my son Solomon ride on my own mule, and take him down to Gihon. There have Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet anoint him king over Israel. Blow the trumpet and shout, Long live King Solomon. Then you are to go up with him, and he is to come and sit on my throne and reign in my place. I have appointed him ruler over Israel and Judah. After firmly establishing Solomon as his successor, David focused his attention on imparting his final instructions to both Solomon and the entire nation of Israel. In 1 Kings chapter 2, verses 2 to 4, David gives Solomon wise and valuable advice. "I am about to go the way of all the earth, so be strong, act like a man, and observe what the Lord your God requires. Walk in obedience to him, and keep his decrees and commands, his laws and regulations, as written in the law of Moses. Do this so that you may prosper in all you do and wherever you go, and that the Lord may keep his promise to me. If your descendants watch how they live, and if they walk faithfully before me with all their heart and soul, you will never fail to have a successor on the throne of Israel." In his last recorded words, David addresses the entire assembly of Israel. In 1 Chronicles chapter 29, verses 10 to 13, he offers a beautiful prayer of praise and deep gratitude. David praised the Lord in the presence of the whole assembly, saying, "Praise be to you, Lord, the God of our father Israel, from everlasting to everlasting. Yours, Lord, is the greatness and the power and the glory and the majesty and the splendor, for everything in heaven and earth is yours. Yours, Lord, is the kingdom. You are exalted as head over all. Wealth and honor come from you. You are the ruler of all things. In your hands are strength and power to exalt and give strength to everyone. Now, our God, we give you thanks, and we praise your glorious name, yours." After a life journey full of both dizzying highs and crushing lows, crowned with the greatest triumphs and shadowed by painful failures, David found his final resting place. In 1 Kings chapter 2, verses 10 to 11, we find these words, "Then David rested with his ancestors and was buried in the city of David. He had reigned over Israel 40 years, 7 years in Hebron and 33 years in Jerusalem." Nevertheless, David's legacy did not vanish with his passing, but continued to live on, profoundly influencing the course of history and the religious beliefs of the Israelite people. This impact is evident in several key aspects. First and foremost, David remained in the memory of his descendants as the epitome of an ideal ruler of Israel. Even centuries after his death, subsequent kings were often compared to him, and the phrase "a king like David" became synonymous with a just and God-fearing monarch. Secondly, David left behind a rich literary legacy in the form of the Psalms. Many of these psalms are traditionally attributed to David, and they continue to serve as a source of comfort, inspiration, and spiritual guidance for believers even today. David's psalms cover the entire spectrum of human experience, from exaltation to sorrow, from unwavering faith to deep despair, always within the context of an unshakable faith in the Almighty. Third, and perhaps most importantly, David occupied a central place in the messianic expectations of Israel. God's divine promise to David of an eternal dynasty, known as the Davidic covenant, gave rise to the hope for the coming of a descendant of David who would establish an everlasting kingdom of justice and peace. This hope found its fulfillment in the person of Jesus Christ. In the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 1, verse 1, the New Testament opens with the words, "The genealogy of Jesus the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham." Jesus Christ is often referred to as the son of David in the Gospels, and his descent from David's lineage is seen as the fulfillment of ancient messianic prophecies. David's life, in all its multifaceted complexity, offers us valuable lessons that are relevant even today. David's story testifies to God's sovereignty in human history. God chose David, Jesse's youngest son, to raise him to the throne as the greatest king of Israel. This reminds us that God often works through the most ordinary and underestimated people to accomplish his great purposes. David's life also serves as a vivid illustration of the importance of faith and trust in God. From his confrontation with Goliath to his years of wandering and his period of kingship, David demonstrated unwavering faith in the Almighty, even in the most seemingly hopeless situations. At the same time, David's story shows us that even in the lives of heroes of faith, there is room for sin and its bitter consequences. David's adultery with Bathsheba and the subsequent murder of Uriah led to long-term and tragic repercussions. However, David's reaction to the rebuke of his sin, sincere repentance, and humble acceptance of God's judgment serves as an example for us of how we should act when confronting our own sins and failures. David's life also teaches us the importance of forgiveness and restoration. Despite the gravity of his sins, David experienced God's forgiveness and was restored to fellowship with him. This gives us hope that no matter how low we may fall, forgiveness and restoration are always available to those who turn to God with sincere repentance in their hearts. The story of King David serves as an eternal reminder that true greatness in the eyes of the Almighty is defined not by flawlessness, but by a sincere striving toward Him. Despite all his shortcomings and mistakes, David remained in the memory of generations as a man after God's own heart, because his soul was always turned to the Creator. He sincerely repented of his sins and asked for forgiveness. In conclusion, David's biography is a multifaceted and captivating story that continues to resonate in people's hearts today, millennia later. His journey from humble shepherd to king of Israel, his glorious victories and bitter defeats, moments of deep faith and human weaknesses, all create a vivid portrait of a life lived in close interaction with God. David's legacy as a warrior, poet, and man of faith continues to influence our understanding of leadership, worship, and what it means to dedicate one's life to serving the Almighty. His story teaches us that God can use imperfect people to achieve His great purposes, and that true greatness lies not in the absence of mistakes, but in a constant readiness to turn to God in all circumstances. Like David, let us strive to be people after God's own heart, relying on His mercy, heeding His guidance, and dedicating our lives to serving Him.